Ladies and gentlemen, to welcome back Tom John, guest on 79. Let's have a good standing ovation.
Before the night's over, Lizette wants to interview the assessor to find out why our taxes are so high here. And if you're going to have Sam Harn here, you better cut the size of the buffet down. Or let him go last. Oh, yeah, it wasn't Sam Harn, but I was broadcasting. I'm broadcasting for the Braves. Ernie Johnson Sr. was not feeling well or something, and then they needed a replacement. So they called me in, and we were doing the Braves and Mets. And Kevin Mitchell, remember Kevin Mitchell, big fat Kevin Mitchell, went over and missed a fly ball, and I mentioned it on the air, and I don't know if I could do it now. I said, but if that was a cheeseburger, he wouldn't have dropped that. The moment of silence for Warren Spahn. I love spawning. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have been around him because I used to ask questions. I was a question asker. And I would ask guys how they held a ball, how they threw this pitch, why they did this, why they stood on the rubber that way, why they did this, because I figured the more questions you ask, the more information you'll get, and you can assimilate. And if you can use it, fine. If you can't use it, fine. But I never had a chance to be around Warren Spahn except about the last 4 years at the All-Star games when they would bring in the old-timers to do the signing. And we were up in Boston, and we were in the mall right outside the Sheraton Hotel there, and my son and I were walking, and Warren was about from here to the back of the room. And I said, gee, you see that guy over there, Tom? And he said, yeah. I said, that's probably the greatest left-hander that ever pitched, ever. And he said, that little guy? And I said, yeah, that was before size mattered. You know, that's when they didn't measure how fast you threw a fastball, but if you could win. And I said, the guy won, 365 games or whatever it was. And he said, I can't believe a guy that small could pitch that well. And but that's how the game's gone. I know I've been in the coaching business. I got out in 1989, and I had a chance to go down to coach a high school team down in Florida for 3 years. And the first year I was there, I had a pretty good team. In fact, probably one of the best baseball awards I've ever received was that year as a high school baseball coach. I was voted the Florida State High School Baseball Coach of the Year. And that doesn't mean in our little area, it's the entire state of Florida. So there's a lot of baseball coaches. And I took this little ragtag team, and we went to the state championships. But the team that we used to have to play, and in fact we played them twice and never scored a run off of them. Their third baseman was a guy named Doug Mitkevich, and their shortstop was Alex Rodriguez. Their second baseman is out in the Seattle organization now. His name is Mickey Lopez. One of their pitchers, the third pitcher on their team was the pitcher that made it to the big leagues with the Twins. He probably came through New Britain, Danny Perkins. If you recall Danny, he was the third pitcher on this team. So we had to go up against that team, and one time we were out there practicing, and the guys, I'm a Bob Knight fan. If you don't know that, I'm from Indiana, and I love Bob Knight. And if my boys played basketball, I would have loved for them to play with Bob Knight, because they would have seen that their dad wasn't as tough as they thought he was. But I was coaching, and you can't do a lot of this stuff in pro ball as you can in high school ball or college ball. But I pulled my team, this one kid, they were kind of screwing around and kept one practice, they were sloppy, the next practice they were sloppy. So I told my coach, I said, don't worry about what's going to happen. I said, this is going to be a very, very, very short practice, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So I let them in their calisthenics, and we did all this stuff, and we played catch, and then we started doing some stuff. And sure enough, one of the kids there, just a very likable young man, caught a ball between his legs or whatever, and I said, hey, cut that out. So it was a church school, and I couldn't cuss, so I couldn't. So I caught the ball, and then he did something else. He flipped it back on his back, and that's all I wanted. The second time, that's it. Come in. And this is a Bob Knight thing, because Bob's done it numerous times. I told him, I said, guys, you guys are going to screw around. I got better things to do with my time. Let's pack the balls and bats up. And when you guys are ready to practice, and practice hard, call me, and I'll come out. But if you don't, if you want to screw around, I said, we'll go play golf. See you guys later. I put the stuff back in my truck, took off, and this kid's father called me that night. What did my son do? And I said, nothing. I said, not a thing. I told him why I did what I did, and he laughed, and he said, well, I said, but you can't tell him, because if you tell him, then the thing's off. But the next day, the guys called me up. Coach, can we practice? Are you going to play? Are you going to practice? Are you going to screw around? He said, no, we'll play. Okay, we had the best practices for about the next week or so, and then they started kind of messing around again. But the thing is, and you see it, guys want to be good. And I had two sons that played ball. They wanted to be good, but they didn't want to work to be good. And I could never understand it. I said, gee whiz, I had a batting cage in my backyard, 15 feet across, 15 feet high, 70 feet long, arm machine thrown. I had 200 baseballs. They could turn it on and off, but it didn't have to go out there. All they had to do was pick the bucket up once, put it back in, cover it up with a tarp, go back in, and I could never get my kids to go practice. And I said, if mom and dad or grandma and grandpa would have had that when I was a kid, they would never got me in. I mean, I would have been out there because I played basketball and rigged up a spotlight with some extension cords going out, nailed to the top of my basketball hoop, and I'd be out there shooting baskets till 9, 10 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock at night, my mom would have to come out with a broom and whack me to get me in the house. Before I came back in 75, I started throwing a baseball every day, and I found that the more I threw the baseball, the better I got. The more I threw it, the stronger I got. Now, I didn't pitch. I just threw the ball. And then I started throwing it. I can throw the ball. If I practice to the outside corner all day long, I can hit that out there every time. If I practice inside, I can hit it almost every time. And I start spinning the curveball. I didn't throw a curveball. I was going to pitch 1 year and 1 day after surgery. And that was the 26th of September, 1975. So I didn't start throwing a curveball until the last of August, because I didn't think I was ready. And they said, well, how long will it take you to get your curveball? I said, until I just start spinning a few and get the ball spinning. And, now, throwing it here, throwing it there, taking speed off, throwing it harder, I'll have to work on that. But I said, all I'm worried about is, will my arm hold up throwing as hard as I can for as long as I can? And I just started finding out the more I practiced at my skills, the better I became. And it's beyond me. And we were talking about this up here, about the players that, like I said, that they want to be good, but they don't want to pay the price to be good. And that's why I love, and I know when we throw this open to questions and answers, there's going to be a name that's going to come out there. That's why I loved Andy Pettitte. When I was doing Yankee baseball on Channel 11 in '98, I would be out there early watching the guy run and throw and to do all this stuff. And he was one of the hardest workers, yet I thought he was one of the most underappreciated pitchers that the Yankees had. I thought that sometimes Andy's a nice guy, very quiet guy, very reserved guy. And sometimes I think people take quietness for weakness. And Andy's a wimp, he's a wuss, Well, he was far from that. He just was not a very demonstrative guy. I think the people in the Yankee organization would have felt better if Andy would come in and he would kick something and throw something and do the Billy Martin stuff and fire all this stuff there. And, man, that's a competitor like this. No, it's not. It's just one guy does it one way, one guy does it the other way. But I thought Andy was probably the most underappreciated pitcher that the Yankees have had in a long time. But baseball is, I personally think baseball is in trouble. And baseball is in trouble because you've got, well, the two prominent teams, Boston and the Yankees, have just about assured that they're going to be the teams that are going to be in the race next year. Yeah, maybe Kansas City might be, maybe the White Sox, the Angels, maybe the Mariners have helped themselves, but it's going to come down to those two teams. But baseball's got to find some way to share the wealth. And as much as I'm against it, you see it more and more and more. Football, my son-in-law has played 6 years now with the Chicago Bears. And, you know, you see every year, almost every team has a chance where a few, you know, an injury less here, the quarterback has a good year, some running back that they drafted or signed has a good year. I think it takes into more of the stuff that baseball is. If you had some way to redistribute the money so that the teams out there, the Kansas Cities, the Twins, the Major League Baseball Expos, that's what I call them now because we're owned by the Major League Baseball. No longer are we called the Montreal Expos, but it's the Major League Baseball Expos run and operated by Bud Selig. You know, they have, I think the Expos budget this year, I think Major League Baseball cut it down to about $25 million, I think. What kind of a team can you put out there for $25 million when you got A-Rod making like 18? You know, or you got guys, you know, that's where it's a shame that the Expos had to lose two of the best players in baseball. The Yankees got Javier Vasquez, and he can pitch. Javi can pitch, absolutely pitch. Not a power pitcher, not a guy like Clemens that's going to blow you away, but he'll throw the fastball by you, but he's got an outstanding changeup. And I was doing an interview the other day, and I said he reminds me a lot of Mario Soto. If you guys remember him with the Reds, had a real good fastball and a real good changeup. Got a good breaking ball, but really has a great changeup. And but when the Expos can't keep those two players, they didn't have a chance to sign them. Didn't have a chance because they couldn't afford it. If they would have signed Vasquez and Vladimir Guerrero, they would have had to go on and sign guys like me. Because there was no money left. When baseball cut their budget down to what it is, they could not sign anybody. And, you know, you start looking at it, and there's a catcher named Michael Barrett. Michael's a very good young catcher. Makes about $2 or $3 million. He's getting to the point where it's going to go boom, like this. You're going to unload him and bring somebody in at $300,000 and let him catch, maybe not quite as good, but that's not fair to the fans who are Expo fans, and there's probably about 5 or 6 of them up there. But that's when they're going to have to look at it and say, you know, we've got to find. Baseball is the greatest sport going. I say it's the most democratic sport, and for all you politicians, that's what the small D. If you know what I mean. Democratic in that you don't have to be 7 feet tall. You don't have to bench press 500 pounds. You don't have to have 4.2 speed. You don't have to do a lot of things. You don't have to have a 48-inch vertical jump. All you have to do is have a skill and be good at it. If you're a pitcher, you have to be able to pitch. If you're a hitter, you have to be able to hit. If you're a fielder, you have to be able to hit, field and hit, which Aaron Boone might want to try. That's terrible. Well, it's either Aaron Boone or Drew Henson. So, you know, what way you going to do this? But really, Aaron Boone was much better. Aaron Boone can play third base, and he just had a rock in his glove in the series. I really felt sorry for him. But I felt sorry for him because the kid can play. In fact, I was talking to my kids at Thanksgiving, and when I was with the Angels, with his dad was my catcher, our kids, my kids, used to play with the Boone boys. And Brett was a little older. Aaron was the age of between my oldest son and my daughter. And I think Matt is the youngest one. Matt was just a little toddler. But they used to go down in Angel Stadium, run around, throw baseballs around all in there like that. But I really felt sorry for him because, you know, here you are on national television and ground balls come and you see that thing go boom, boom, boom. And then you got Tim McCarver analyzing it 57 ways. And that's when I was doing to television, they would run the replay 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and in my ear they would say, "Tell us something, you know, something new." And I said, you know, they want me to say something new. That's the same sorry hanging slider. I'm sorry. That's all it is. I don't think they appreciated me. But I said, what more can you say? The guy hung a slider right here. Guy hit it out of the ballpark. He probably should have hit it farther than what he did. And, you know, what do you want me to say? Well, gee, I thought his belt was too tight that he couldn't get over his stomach or whatever like this. But, you know, I mean, they show it 4, 5, 6 times. And then when you get into playoffs and series, it's even worse than that. You know, you got all these angles and, you know, and all this stuff. Just show the game play and let's go. And if you could take McCarver's mouth just a little bit. I'll go down to spring training with the Major League Baseball Expos, and I'll be down there, and we'll be working and trying to get the guys ready for the season. And I've never done anything in my life from February until October and play baseball from, what, 52 years now. So, you know, maybe I'll find a lawn mowing job or something I can do. But we're in, I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You'll need lawns mowed up there. If you've ever, just spend a time where you have to go back and forth through the countries, through the thing, and you will appreciate living here in this country. I swear to God, you really will. Because it's a pain to go through customs, to go through immigration, to go through all that stuff. Every time you leave, you know, they weigh your bag, and we had one of our guys, he had his clothes out on the floor, and he said, "Tommy, which do you think weighs the most?" Because he was overweight by about 10 pounds, and he had to take 10 pounds out, because 10 pounds for $150 was what they were going to charge him, international. So he said, well, you got to take this, got to take that. And I had my carry bag. He was shoving stuff in mine. One of the other coaches had stuff in his. He had stuff in his he was carrying. You could carry all the stuff in your arms like this walking down, but you couldn't have it in the luggage. Now, you know, I asked the agent, I said, you know, tell me, why do you do that? Well, it's for the plane's weight. I said, well, it's the same weight that's going to go on, only it's not going to be in that suitcase. It's going to be in his arms as he's carrying it, and he throws it onto the plane. But we played up there this year and never had an off day. If you ever want to go to the Pacific Coast League, we traveled this year probably about 75,000 miles as a minor league team. Every off day was a travel day. And they said, yeah, but you can fly at noon. Well, noon, I'd rather be out playing golf at noon than being on some airplane sitting there where my butt's bigger than the seat. My favorite ball player growing up, I had 2, Hank Sauer and Dee Fondy. And Dee Fondy was a kind of a J.T. Snow type fielder, about the same kind of a hitter, slick fielding hitter. I mean, slick fielding first baseman, and then Hank Sauer was Jewish left fielder. Big power, big raw bone guy, you know. And the guys who were with the Yankees, there wasn't a player there that had heard of those guys. Who are in what? Who are they what? Who are those guys? You know, House of David? What are those guys? Nah, they played for the Cubs back in the 50s. But that's, but baseball is, baseball's great. It's great because, like I said, you can be short and fat like Kirby Puckett or John Kruk, or you can be tall and skinny like Randy Johnson, or you can be something like me, and you can have a great time playing it. And I know coaching, the thing I try to do when I coach my guys is make sure that they have fun. This year, I don't go out to the mound very often as a coach, and they ask me why. I said because I hate it to have coaches come out and just, oh, well, I want you to slow down, and I want you to take a deep breath. Well, don't tell me that. I know how to breathe. And just, you know, so one time I went out, and I hadn't been out to the mound in a while, and I had a handful of sunflower seeds. And I said, God, it's time to go out. So, well, what am I going to do with the seeds? Well, I started dropping them as I walked out to the mound, and I talked to the pitcher, and I got down, and then on my way back, I started picking them up on my way back, because I didn't want to get lost going from the mound to third base. They saw me do that, and the guys, they said, I can't believe you just did what you did. And I said, why? You know, what did I hurt in the game? And because everybody was laughing. And I said, you know, that's the problem. You guys, you got to have fun in the game, but you got to know when to tone it down. And I'll tell you, when I was with the Yankees, I wish we had a tape recording of our bus rides from the ballpark to the airport, when Catfish and Piniella and Nettles and Mickey Rivers and Munson and Reggie would get on each other. I tell you, it was priceless. And it would only sell, it would only be funny to the guys on the bus, because anybody else would look and they'd say, boy, that's a horrible thing to say about a player or something like that. But when you play ball and you have guys that you play with, they're allowed to say anything to you in the world, and it doesn't mean anything. If some outsider hears it, oh my God, that's a racial comment. Holy Jesus, that, this, and that. No, it's not. It's just 25 guys being silly. And I said, if my boys growing up acted like our players on the Yankees and the Dodgers and all that, I said I would have spanked them so hard. But, you know, you would get a birthday cake, Sparky Lau would come in, bare ass naked, sit on it like this, and there goes your birthday. Rigetti, we had one time, we had 3 different airlines in 1 year because the 2 of them refused to fly us. And Piniella and those guys, God, was that funny. Greg Nettles used to do his exercises right here. He said, guys, keep going. He said, I'm holding this wall up because I don't want that sucker to fall on all you guys. So when they got through with doing all the exercises, then Greg would start playing catch and do the running and all. But I don't think he did one sit-up or one deep knee bend or a lunge or whatever. He just held the wall up in right field to keep it from falling in on us. But baseball's great, and they've got some problems to take care of internally between the Players Association and the owners. And if they get that fixed, it will be back and booming. But it's great. You know, where can you go? Actually, you people are fortunate because you got 2 or 3 teams around here that you can go to minor league-wise. You know, where can you go? I did play-by-play for the Charlotte Knights. It's a AAA affiliate, 2 years for the Marlins, and the last 4 years that I was doing their play-by-play for the White Sox. I said, our top ticket was $8. I mean, you get the best seat in the house for $8. I said, where can you go for $8? You can't even go to a movie anymore for $8. And, you know, then we had Thirsty Thursdays that they'd have to cut everybody off about the 3rd inning. I know that the Terra Novas, that they would have to cut them off maybe in the 2nd inning. But, you know, really, baseball's great, and you're really fortunate here because you're at the boundary line. You're at the Mason-Dixon line between Red Sox country and Yankee country, and you're really fortunate that you can go see 2 of the best teams. And I'll tell you that this year, the Red Sox did themselves very, very well by getting Schilling. And if they get A-Rod, you may have the owner of the Yankees may have a heart attack. But the only sad thing about getting rid of Nomar is now you're going to have his wife in the stands. And shoot, I'd rather have his wife in the stands than A-Rod. I mean, he's single, but then again, maybe he would have nicer looking girls than. But anyway, you're really fortunate that you do have the Red Sox to the north and the Yankees to the south, and we won't even qualify the Mets. They'll. As soon as they get their fantasy team going, they'll be fine. But, yeah, but that's where baseball's going now, really. And the one last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll throw it open to questions and answers from the floor. Baseball has gone away, and I really think it's good that they're going to fantasy baseball, guys that will make trades and acquisitions as, you know, certain criteria that they want met. And don't care if a guy can field or whatever, as long as he can get on base, his on-base percentage. Well, it just stands to reason if you have a team that has an on-base percentage of 1,000, they will never make an out. So, you know, that's why you want to try to get as many guys on base, and then you want guys that have great slugging percentage, hitting 3, 4, and 5. And then you've got a chance to have some runs scored. And they're figuring out something that I knew for a long time: stolen bases does not enter into run scoring as much as everybody thinks, unless, asterisk, unless you have a team with no power. Then like the Dodgers had back in the 60s, where you had to bunt, hit, run, steal, sacrifice fly, Koufax pitch a shutout, you win 2-0. That's when the stolen bases come in. But nowadays, if you're going to steal bases, it's the teams that run are not the teams that really score a lot of runs. But it still comes down, baseball still comes down to this one precept. Teams that can field the ball and can pitch are going to be pretty good. The Atlanta Braves have proven that. They only won one World Series in, 11 years, but they won their division, 11 years or 10 out of 11 years or whatever it is, and they've kept the one thing intact. Pitching is the one thing that is the constant. And if you can pitch and if you can field, you're going to be very, very, very good. And I hope that I think the Red Sox have helped themselves pitching by getting Schilling, and I hope the Yankees have not hurt themselves by getting rid of Pettit, because Yankee Stadium is made for left-handed hitters and left-handed pitchers. And when you start getting away from that fact, you'll start having an average run-of-the-mill team, because all of a sudden you make the other team's left-handed hitters better because you got all right-handed pitchers going at them. What the symptoms to my surgery? You know, there was no symptoms. I was 13-3, and I did not have an arm problem, an arm ache, an arm pain. Yeah, my arm hurt, you know, and you know, after a game, oh man, and then you'd throw and it felt good. But there was no little twinges of pain as I threw, nothing. And that's what we were talking about over here. Dr. Job said if you would fill a glass of water up to the top, and if you start putting BBs in it, one BB is going to make it overflow. Is it going to be the 50th, the 100th, the 200th, the 300th? I don't know. So when you throw and you just wear and tear on your arm, and plus medicine back in that days, if you did have a problem with your elbow, every doctor, Dr. Job included, injected. From the time I first heard, I had my first elbow injection. You know, people ask, where were you when Jack Kennedy was killed? Well, I was in the St. Louis Cardinals orthopedic surgeon's office getting ready to get a cortisone injection when all that stuff happened. And that's when I had my first injection, November 22nd, 1963. Between there and 1974, I probably had 40 or 50. And when I tell doctors that, they go, holy jeez, no wonder your elbow went. Well, that's not done nowadays, because back then they didn't know that cortisone was bad long term. But that was what it was. It was just the way the medicine was practiced, you know, and really I didn't invent the surgery. Dr. Job did, and I thank God he was an orthopedic surgeon and not a proctologist. Yes. Yes, 81 World Series. Bottom of the fourth. Well, I just told Bob Lemon. Lim told me, he said, I'm pitch hit for you. I said, what? He said, I'm pitch hit for you. Who are you going to bring in? He said, George Frazier. It's just Lim. Frazier hadn't pitched well all series. You know? What are you going to do? Well, he got upset. He said, go around and sit down. And I said, Lim, you wouldn't manage like this during the season. If we had to win a game against Boston, you wouldn't manage like this. Shut up, you know. Well, I was kind of stepping over the bounds of player managed, but so I'm sitting over on the end of the thing, lead early, and go to the bullpen and win the game out of the bullpen. And that's what I was told by the person that was in the meeting. And he said, when he said it, everybody looked at each other and, okay, the boss said it, and that's what you did. And that's what Lem did. And it was not baseball. I mean, it was not good baseball. Because it just, you don't have, that was probably the worst managerial move in World Series history, this next spring. So, you know, if you're going to take your best pitcher out in the 4th inning, then you've got to play it like it's the 9th inning. Who do you pitch out? That's how you have to play the game. Lem didn't do it. But Lem did what Steinbrenner wanted him to do. Which goes to show you George doesn't know managing. Yes? Yep. When you should throw a curveball? In my estimation, a curveball doesn't hurt your arm any more than a fastball or any other pitch if it's thrown properly. The problem is, I think a curveball is a strength pitch. And to really throw a curveball good, you've got to get over and pull down on it, and it takes strength. And when you get strong enough that you can get your hand in this position like you're going to throw a football, when you can get your hand like this every time, boom, and pound over the ball, it's the same. Actually, I can take a picture of me throwing a fastball and a curveball, and my hand will be like this every time. You'll say, well, what happened to the curveball like this? Well, it does that up there. And then as you come forward, your hand does this. And then it comes back like this. But it happens so fast, you think you do it like that, but it's not. It's back up here. The ball will break straight down. If you get spin going this way, the ball will break this way. So if you want it to break any other way, then you have to add varying degrees of break. And it comes from here, there, until you get way up on top. And some pitchers, real good curveball pitchers, could get their hand wrapped so much like this and throw it that the ball would actually break backwards. But the ball will only break the way that you put spin on it. But you've got to be strong. The best pitch for you to practice now is a strike. Seriously. Seriously. And that's with your fastball. When you can throw your fastball for a strike 8 out of 10 times, here, 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 then you can start working on other stuff. But until you can do that, doesn't do any good, because ball 4, you can have 4 of the greatest pitches in your league, and if you can't throw ball strike 1, strike 2, it doesn't do any good. If it's ball 1, 2, 3, 4, the guy walks, and you've got great pitches. Shucking corn in my kitchen in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and George Steinbrenner called me, and he was crying on the phone and told me that Thurman Munson had died in an airplane crash. And we had just gotten in from Chicago that night, and I had a bunch of Indiana homegrown corn, and Thurman was going home. He flew his jet home to Canton, and you know, it's okay, well, we'll see you Friday, you know, blah, blah, blah. And George told me that Thurman had died, and then the next day we went to the ballpark, and he came down and told us what happened and how it happened and what, you know, all this stuff. And George broke down three or four times, which, you know, shows you that he is human. But it was, we played the Orioles Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, a 4-game series. And Thurman was buried Monday in Canton. And I remember Goose came over to my house in the morning, and we took him to the airport. And then we came back. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And we came back that afternoon. We stretched out on our couches and took a little nap and went in. And the Baltimore Orioles told us, they said, if you guys don't want to play, we won't play, because we understand. Because a lot of those guys went